word was contrast. We're going to call it the law of contrast. So let me define contrast before I basically, essentially what this is saying is how to transcend beyond all contrast. So a symbolic symbol of it would be the mountain. You know, you take a look at all the beautiful, amazing mountain peaks. The contrast of the peaks is the valley. By the way, as mentor would always say, it's the valley that builds your character. It's not the mountaintops. It's the valley that builds you for the mountaintop. In other words, the valley prepares you for the view that you're going to get when you hit the mountaintop. Many people hit the mountaintop too soon. If they're not careful, they can hit the mountaintop too soon before they're ready. And then the valley doesn't look, or the scenery doesn't look as good as it could if they'd have taken a little bit more time in building themselves on the way up, and maybe even took some more people with them on the way up to the top of the mountain. The view looks uniquely different when you're prepared for the mountaintop. And let me bring this home and tell you what I'm really referencing to when I use that term. If you get to the mountaintop too quick, the scenery doesn't look nearly as brilliant, beautiful, majestic, whatever you want to put in there, as it does if you're there at the appropriate time, at the right place at the right time. Let's take a person that wins a lottery, wins $50 million, incredible amount of money. They lived in poverty their whole life. All of a sudden, they have $50 million. What happens to that person? They generally, in 3 years, they will have it gone. They have it spent. It's no longer there. And so as I say that, they got to the mountaintop too quick before they were ready, and the view, they couldn't see what was actually there, and they lost it all. But let's take a different look. A person that desires financial freedom, the contrast is a poverty lifestyle. And so many people live a poverty mindset lifestyle, but have a financial freedom desire in their heart. And so that contrast is such a off-kiltered contrast that there's no way they can have the financial freedom, because they're committed to the contrast. They're committed to the poverty mindset lifestyle. They're committed to the poverty mindset. They're committed to the poverty lifestyle. So there's no way they're ever going to have the financial freedom. They're not going to be out of debt. They will not live the life of abundance because they are living in the contrast. Now, we will all go through the valley. That is the contrast of the mountaintop, but we must not be a part of the valley. We can be in the valley, but not of the valley. As the scripture says, you are in the world, but not of the world. That's the contrast. That you see, we all live in this world. We can't help that. But we don't have to be of the world. The world is all the different things that are opposite of God. God He's the creator of all. You have the ability to, also you are made in His likeness, so we have the ability to be creative, and we have the ability to be successful, and we have the ability to serve. We have the ability for all those amazing things, but many of us don't do that because we don't believe we can, or we think, who am I? And if people just knew all my problems, if people just knew all the irresponsible thoughts that I have, and when we're done with that negative self-talk, there's not much left of you to actually go out and make a difference in somebody else's life, because by now you have convinced yourself you really have nothing to offer. The contrast has overtaken you. The valley has overtaken you. You've become a part of the valley. You're not just going through the valley, you are a part of the valley at that point in time. So you can go through the valley, just don't be a part of the valley. You're headed to the mountaintop. The contrast, let's take a different look. Let's continue forward. I want good health, but I keep eating in a way that supports the opposite of good health, the contrast of good health. And so I will never have good health because I'm constantly not performing in a way that supports good health. So I am saying with my actions that I love bad health. I love not having the right atmosphere, and I'm not putting the content in my body that it needs to obtain and sustain good health, because I really love some of the things that prevent me from having good health. So good health is what I'm looking for. The contrast is eating in such a way that good health cannot be a part of my existence. And so in that sense, I am living in this world, and I'm of the world as well, because the world isn't necessarily that concerned about consumption of things that pertain to good health. And the scripture does talk about not defiling the body. That could mean also in the food that we eat. Is it in such a way that it actually supports the vitality, the vigor, the health that it takes? God said he wants to live in this temple that he has created, which he's referencing to the human body. And in another place he talks about he's become flesh, where he's actually living in us. And so, we get to take good care of this. We get to put in good content so that it can be healthy. But the contrast of that is irresponsible and not having good health and not taking care of ourselves and living a lifestyle contrary to what we say we want. That's when it says that we are a part of the world, is when we're living contrary to what we know would be good for our physiology. I know to teach and to grow myself, but I choose not to. That's the contrast, is to stay in ignorance. Scripture says in Genesis that for the lack of knowledge do my people perish. And I know to grow myself. I know to develop myself. I know to become a better husband, a better wife, a better teacher, all of those things. But I choose not to because it is out of my comfort zone. I am choosing to live the contrast, and therefore I am actually a part of the world because that's what would be enhanced there. That's what would be promoted, is the world promotes anything outside of good health, sound mind, no confusion. It promotes the contrast of all of those. The contrast of a sound mind is a confused mind. The contrast of good health is bad health. And the contrast of good consumption is bad consumption. A lot of maybe alcohol or drugs or maybe even tobacco or whatever it may be that we are consuming that supports not the vitality that we need, desire, and deserve. Then we are of this world. We are not only in the world, but we are also of the world. It's an interesting thing. The law of contrast is one of those things, it is timeless. It doesn't, I don't know, it just started, and it's still here, and it always will be. It's something that there's no way I could unpack it in a month of every morning talking about the law of contrast. The law of contrast is powerful. It is symbolic in everything of our life, every area of our life. And it is something that we get to be very, very conscious of and act accordingly to our environment to understand the true law of contrast and then assess ourselves. Am I resisting the law of contrast, or am I just blending in with what feels right for the moment? With that being said, the law of contrast also has a paradoxical twist. And so the twist is there is bad resistance and then there's good resistance. And so a plane, if he's sitting in the airport, just sitting still, there is no contrast. There's no resistance. It's just sitting there. But for the plane to get off the concrete in the air, it must face the contrast. And the contrast is movement. It's sitting still. Contrast is movement. But the speed of movement determines whether it ever leaves the concrete or not. You see, it must create resistance. The air hitting the wing creates a resistance, and then it creates a lift, where it begins to lift it from the top up. Yeah, most of us think it hits the bottom of the wing and it lifts it. It doesn't actually lift from the top. It lifts from the top up, but that is the contrast. And the more contrast it gets, the more resistance it gets, the more it lifts. Till ultimately the plane lifts off, and now it's gliding through the air smoothly because it has created enough of the contrast that it can now no longer be overpowered by the gravity of Earth. It actually defies the gravity of Earth, and it goes contrary to the gravity. It continues to lift and lift and lift to the element that you want to go to. And then you cruise along and do whatever you want. You come back. You gradually lower it, and then once you're on the pavement, slow it down enough so that it can't lift off, and you stop again. There's a contrast in everything. It is symbolic in our life, in every area of life. But we get to realize to transcend beyond the contrast is to understand the contrast of every area of life. Once we understand it, then we can start to transcend it. We can start to have self-awareness. If I'm going to eat this today, is this actually going to give me what I want tomorrow or no? And if the answer is no, then don't eat it today. If the answer is yes, then consume it today. Should I take this certain product? Will that help me? And if the answer is yeah, I probably would, then consume it. Take it. It will support your physiology tomorrow. The content, many times we think, well, I've heard the same content over and over and over. I'm ready for new content. Sometimes we need to hear the same content enough that it sinks in our spirit and it starts to make a difference before we try to go find something new to listen to beyond in terms of personal growth content, whatever it may be. My point with that is far too often we are entertainment seekers. Oh, I've heard all this stuff before. It doesn't do anything for me anymore. Let me hear something new. That is entertainment seeker, not actually a results seeker. So the contrast of getting results is entertainment. So I say I want results, but I really, truly just want entertainment. Then I'm going to start seeking something new so that I get more entertainment again. It feels good. But make good what you have, where you're at. Learn how to discover the contrast in every area of life and learn how to navigate through that. And in some cases, as an airplane must have resistance of air to lift up, sometimes you have to have the resistance of your uncomfort zone. Stepping out of your comfort zone is much like a plane going down the runway. When you get out of your comfort zone and you're in your uncomfort zone, that creates enough resistance to start elevating every area of your life. With that being said, guys, I get to stop or I could go on. I'll get carried away in too many different directions. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Do me a favor. As always, remember, don't settle for less than who you are. May God bless you.